As the fourth night settled over the palace, Scheherazada's voice carried through the darkness with urgent intensity. My king, when last we spoke, the cursed magic had spread beyond its prison. King Yunan faced reports of villages turned to stone. And now a terrible choice lay before him: to act swiftly, or watch his entire realm crumble to dust. Her eyes gleamed in the candlelight as she continued. The ruby exploded into fragments. Fire consumed the ancient map, turning centuries of secrets into ash within seconds. King Yunan could only watch, as his last clue dissolved before his eyes. But instead of despair, something harder than steel formed in his chest. This sorcery spreads like wildfire through my kingdom, he declared to his advisors. Every moment we delay, more innocents turn to stone. We ride at dawn. Your Majesty, his captain protested. We have no idea where to find this sorceress. Yunan pointed to the palace gardens, where frozen roses marked a clear trail eastward. Zahra leaves a path of ice wherever she goes. We follow the frozen flowers. By sunrise, King Yunan and 20 of his finest warriors thundered across the wasteland. The trail of crystallized blooms led them through increasingly hostile terrain. Barren hills where nothing grew, except Zahra's ice flowers, marking her passage like drops of frozen blood. For 3 brutal days they rode without rest, pushing their horses to the limit. The trail never wavered, always pointing east toward the forbidden lands. On the 3rd evening, they reached the Valley of Sighs. The moment their horses stepped into the canyon, whispers began echoing off the stone walls. Not wind through rock, but human voices calling out in desperate longing. Hassan, Hassan, my beloved son. The youngest warrior's eyes went blank. He dismounted like a sleepwalker, drawn toward the canyon walls by invisible threads. Hassan, don't listen, another soldier shouted, grabbing his friend's arm. But Hassan smiled with unnatural peace. My mother calls me home. She says the war is finally over. King Yunan spurred his horse forward and pressed the flat of his sword against Hassan's forehead. The cold steel shattered the phantom spell instantly. Hassan gasped, stumbling backward. The voice, it knew things only my dead mother could know. How is that possible? This cursed place feeds on our deepest longings. Yunan explained grimly. Cover your ears and follow only my horse. Do not listen to anything else. They galloped through the wailing canyon, the phantom voices growing more desperate with each hoofbeat, promising love, rest, peace, anything to make them stop. 2 more men fell to the haunting calls before the survivors finally burst into open desert. Behind them, the canyon fell silent, as if disappointed by their escape. And there it stretched before them, the Fire Sea. An ocean of molten glass rippled under the setting sun, each wave singing with musical notes that resonated in their bones. The liquid fire moved slowly, hypnotically, beautiful and deadly. Rising from the center stood a single black island, wreathed in columns of smoke. How do we cross this? One warrior asked, his voice tight with fear. As if answering his question, black stones began rising from the molten surface. One by one, they formed a bridge of stepping stones, each piece cooling just long enough to bear weight, before sinking back into the fire. The bridge appears for us, Yunan observed, but it won't wait for hesitation. He spurred his horse forward onto the first stone. It held firm for exactly 3 heartbeats before beginning to crack. Behind him, his warriors followed in single file, each stone supporting them for mere moments, before dissolving back into liquid glass. There was no time for fear, no chance to look back. Each leap required perfect timing and absolute faith. One miscalculation meant death in molten fire. The path behind them vanished as quickly as it formed. There would be no retreat from this place. Zahra waited in a garden of black glass, where crystal trees bore fruits of polished gems. Her red robes flowed like living flame. But when she finally revealed her face, it was deeply unsettling. Her features shifted constantly. Beautiful one moment, hideous the next, then something in between. The curse she had cast on others was now consuming her as well, unable to let her rest in any single form. "So the king comes to bargain for his people's lives," she said, her voice carrying strange harmonics that made the crystal fruits ring like tiny bells, some high and pure, others deep and resonant. "Not to bargain," Yunan replied, dismounting calmly. "To offer you something you've lost." Her expression flickered with genuine surprise. "And what might that be?" "An ending to your suffering." Zahra tilted her head, studying him with new interest. "Explain yourself, mortal king." Yunan stepped closer, ignoring the waves of heat radiating from her presence. "Your curse was meant to punish one man's betrayal, but it's grown beyond your control, spreading across the land like poison. The magic that was supposed to bring you justice now tortures you as well. You can't even hold your own face steady." For the first time in centuries, uncertainty crossed the sorceress's features. "I can offer you release," Yunan continued. "Not forgiveness for the prince. That choice remains yours alone. But freedom from magic that has turned against its own creator." Zahra was silent for a long moment, her shifting face reflecting deep internal struggle. "You speak of things no mortal should understand," she said finally. "Then test me." She raised her hand, and the crystal garden transformed around them. Trees uprooted themselves, their branches weaving together into a maze of thorns and razor-sharp gems. "In the heart of this labyrinth lies a pool of liquid starlight," Zahra declared. "If you truly understand what it means to break a curse, you'll know what to bring me. But the path will force you to face every hard choice you've ever made as king. Show me you can confront difficult truths, and you may succeed. Deny them, and the maze will become your tomb." King Yunan drew his sword with steady hands. "I accept your challenge." The labyrinth closed around him like a living predator. Thorns sharp as needles scraped his armor as he pushed deeper into the twisting paths, leaving thin lines of blood on the metal. But the real test began when he encountered the first mirror. It glowed with a cold blue light, the color of regret. In its surface stood a younger version of himself, crown fresh upon his head, signing documents with royal authority. Behind him, a line of desperate peasants waited to hear his judgment on their failed harvest. "I ruled justly," he told his reflection. The reflection shook its head. "When your people starved, you sent grain to neighboring kingdoms to maintain trade agreements. You chose what was politically safe over what was right." The thorns pressed closer, drawing fresh blood. "I had to consider the greater good of the kingdom." "You considered your own comfort," his reflection replied. Admitting your people's needs would have meant difficult conversations with nobles who filled your treasury. The thorns began to pierce his armor. Only complete honesty would free him. "You're right," Yunan admitted, the words burning his throat. "I chose politics over people because I was afraid of appearing weak to my court." The mirror shattered into silver fragments, and the thorny path opened before him. The maze presented him with more mirrors. Red ones glowing with the heat of pride, green ones pulsing with the sickness of fear. Each showed difficult moments from his reign, times when he had chosen the easier path over the harder right choice. With each honest admission of his mistakes, the thorns retreated. With each excuse, they drew tighter. By the time he reached the maze's heart, his armor was torn and bloodied. But he had faced the truth about his failings as a king. The pool of liquid starlight sat in a clearing of smooth obsidian. Its surface didn't reflect his face, but rather the faces of every person his decisions had affected. Peasants who had prospered or suffered, soldiers who had lived or died, citizens whose lives had been shaped by his choices. He cupped his hands and lifted a single drop of the glowing substance. It pulsed against his palms like a tiny beating heart. When he emerged from the collapsing maze, Zahra studied him with newfound respect. The drop of starlight continued pulsing in his bloodied hands. "You faced your failures willingly," she observed. "Most kings would die in the thorns rather than admit weakness to themselves. Honesty in the face of difficulty becomes strength." Yunan replied, offering her the precious drop. "Just as hatred released becomes freedom." Zahra accepted the starlight, and the moment it touched her palm, something miraculous occurred. Her constantly shifting features began to slow, then settle. The endless flux between youth and age ceased, and for the first time in centuries, her face held steady, neither young nor old, but timeless and finally at peace. "The curse," she whispered, touching her now stable features with wonder. "I can feel its grip loosening on my soul. I am myself again." She pulled a ring from her finger. A golden serpent coiled around a bloodstone that pulsed with inner fire. "This ring contains the last of my binding magic," she explained. "Cast it into the enchanted lake at dawn, and the curse will break completely. But understand this: Prince Qamar will remember everything, including his betrayal of me. Whether he seeks redemption or revenge, that choice will be his alone to make." Yunan accepted the ring, feeling its warmth pulse against his palm. "And you, what will you do with your newfound freedom?" Zahra looked toward the horizon, where the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I will learn to live without the weight of hatred. Perhaps, in time, I might even learn to forgive." They returned to the enchanted lake as dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of gold and rose. King Yunan stood at the water's edge, the serpent ring heavy with destiny in his palm. The lake surface was perfectly still, reflecting the awakening sky like polished silver. Without hesitation, he cast the ring into the depths. The lake erupted in brilliant golden light. Crystalline fish swirled upward in spirals, their voices joining in songs of liberation that echoed across the land. In the distant capital city, ancient statues began to crack and crumble as enchanted stone transformed back into living, breathing flesh. and in his palace of crumbling obsidian walls. Prince Qamar opened both eyes. For the first time in centuries. No longer half man, half statue, but wholly alive and completely human. He rose slowly from his throne, feeling warm sunlight touch his skin. Through the palace windows, he could see his people emerging from the lake, human once more, calling out in joy and confusion as they rediscovered their voices, their bodies, their lives. But in his heart, alongside overwhelming relief and gratitude, stirred the clear memory of what he had done to her. The weight of it pressed down like stone. He did not weep, he dared not. For what good were tears, when they could not heal the wound he had carved into Zahra's heart? The curse was broken. He was free to choose his path once more. But being freed from punishment was not the same as earning forgiveness. And now, with his second chance, he would have to decide what kind of man he truly wanted to be. Scheherazada's voice dropped to barely a whisper as the candles flickered in the pre-dawn darkness. And so the curse was lifted, and the prince restored to life. But freedom, my king, is a gift that comes with its own burden of choice. What Prince Qamar would do with his liberation, whether he would seek to make amends for what he had done, or repeat the mistakes that had brought such suffering, that tale must wait for another night. Her eyes gleamed in the dying candlelight. For Qamar's choice will shape not just his own fate, but the destiny of all who love him. And some choices, once made, can never be undone. The final flame died, leaving only the echo of her words, and the promise of revelations yet to come.